Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell in the upper right-hand corner. Follow me on all forms of social media. Check me out at thatdrummerguy.com and enjoy the following presentation.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. It's Tyler.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking time to do this interview.
Of course. Sorry I missed your Skype message. I opened it up and I didn't see anything, so I was like, well, let's just call since we're not using video.
No problem at all. I'm very glad to be able to do this, and very thankful for you to be able to take the time to be able to do this. I mean, with everything that you got going on right now, I mean, there's so much great things that are going on in your world right now. I mean, with everything that you got going on and all the different tours and publicity that you've been able to do, I mean, it's so great to see all of that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's my day off, but I like doing these. I think it's beneficial, and so thank you for having me and taking your time.
Oh, not a problem. So, with that said, for anyone who may be checking this out who may not be familiar, how did you get your start doing what you do?
Wow, that is a 10-year-long answer. The short version of that is I didn't really discover drums until I was 16 years old, and my first drum set not until I was 17. So compared to all my friends and peers, that's significantly late on the time scale of my career compared to other people's. But no, it was just I happened to see a concert which inspired me to want to play the drums, and it was kind of just the right time, right place, and I was kind of in a weird state of mind in high school and didn't have a lot of friends and was looking for something that was going to give me that push towards a career in life. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And thankfully, my dad was very adamant to push me towards music school, and ended up going to a school called Musicians Institute, graduated, became a professional touring drummer 3 years later, and have been doing that ever since.
And
that is the Cliff Notes version.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so much that can go into being a drummer and a musician in general, but it's awesome to see that you were able to discover in high school the direction that you wanted to go in.
Yeah, and I at first it just seemed, like a fun hobby. In my mind, with pressure, from your parents, I still didn't know what it was going to be. I thought it would be fantastic if it could have been music, but I knew nobody that made a career in the music industry. My parents all had traditional jobs, and since I was the oldest, I didn't know that this was a thing. It wasn't until I took my first drum lesson, which was a guy named Mike Johnson, who has now become Mike'sLessons.com, the biggest YouTube teacher, amazing drummer, amazing human being. But when I met him, he was just a teacher in Sacramento who was in a few bands, who had done some work with bigger bands, and he was this amazing dude, and was a great drummer, just as great as CSA. But he was the one that made me realize, oh, there's a career in this, and there's other routes that I can take. I don't have to just be in my band that I started. I can maybe play for pop singers and go, further with this than I ever imagined. So he was really the first spark that showed me the way, and he helped me get into music school just by prepping me with learning certain rudiments and stuff like that, just because I was so unknowledgeable at the drums at that time. And this was 2003, 2004.
And with that in mind, I mean, how long did it take you with doing lessons until you started feeling comfortable behind the kit?
I mean, I still take lessons. I've been doing this for quite some time now, and I feel comfortable now, but I think it must have been at least a good 6 years into the kit, and I finally felt like I had a grasp on what the instrument was, what our role is as a drummer, and that probably would have been the year after I graduated music school, just because I was so enveloped with different genres in school. I had a lot of people around me who were growing as well, and it just seemed like there was a lot of positivity at that time, and the drumming community is so tight, so everyone was just very, very helpful. And when I graduated school, that was when I was just I finally get this instrument. Before, I was struggling to play catch up me catch up. And now I'm finally there. But no, I still take lessons to this day, even though I'm, doing things with my career that I've always wanted to do, and I've earned, the success that I always wanted. I'm still not the drummer I want to be, and I'm trying to figure that out still. So I still take lessons, and I'm just trying to be somewhat, I just want to be more and more comfortable with that. I don't want to be some phenom drummer that's doing clinics and, doing things that they've never seen on a drum set. I just want to be more in tune with the instrument than I currently am.
Oh yeah, I mean, with what you do right now, I mean, being able to check out your work and the fact that you are able to go from gig to gig and be able to learn the songs and be able to play what is needed for it. I mean, that to me is more impressive than all the ostinato ligament work that you can do, all the gravity blasts that you can do at 300 beats per minute. It's just like the fact that you can go to these different situations and play exactly what's needed. I mean, to me, that is such a great thing to be able to accomplish as a musician.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree with you as well. There's always time and a place for those sort of gimmicky things on drums. We all have our little nuances that we love to throw in, whether it's somebody's blast beats or stick tricks or whatever. You have to give yourself some of those sometimes. But no, it is a grind. The tour that I'm on now, I get the call 5 days before, and didn't expect to be on tour currently. And I had to learn songs within a few days, and it just seems to be the normal cycle of my career is getting these last minute gigs, but succeeding in them and doing the best that I can.
And with that, when you only have like a certain number of days before you got to go out and do a full-fledged tour, I mean, what is that like for you to like sit down and prepare to learn these songs?
Well, thankfully with school, they taught me how to, chart a song within one run-through listen. There was a class literally dedicated to that. We had a teacher who would sit there, he would play a verse of a song, and he would go, okay, chart out the entire drums. Give me everything you can. And we did this repetitiously every single day, and by the end, we could memorize certain patterns, and it became this kind of subconscious thing, and I use that class, which was more than 10 years ago. I still use that today when I chart out songs. I was actually hanging out with a buddy of mine, Josh, in Nashville, who's a great drummer, and he had just gotten a gig, and they gave him one listen through a song, and he had to chart the song out. And that can be really stressful if you're new to a camp and you want to impress people because, say you are a great drummer, but stuff like that can be kind of challenging. And so he did it. He got through. He had the gig. But I made him play the song for me just to see if I could chart out the entire song with one listen through. This was like a mental test for me. And it was like a speed reading challenge. I was writing so many little things everywhere. It was so much fun. I actually get a kick out of charting songs. And the more complex, like a drum beat, is much, much more fun. There was a stint when Tesseract came out with an album a few years ago, and I could not stop charting out the drums for that entire record. It was just like a side hobby for me. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and it's great to see that inspiration. I mean, whether you're learning it for that gig or you're just learning it for your own enjoyment. I mean, when you're able to learn those songs out and get new ideas, new inspiration. I mean, no matter what you listen to in music, it can always find a way to be inspiration for what you're currently doing.
Yeah, I agree.
So again, with that in mind, I mean, just having a few days before learning the songs, learning the sets, and then going out on tour, how do you manage when you're doing the drums? I mean, do you bring your own kit out? Is there a gig kit that you have to use? I mean, how does that situation work?
Every tour is different. It's its own unique flower, and you never know what you're walking into. There's something like that I'm currently on. I'm on tour with this girl, Taylor Gray, and since it was so last minute, there was no way to ship my gear to the first city. So had the city been Los Angeles, where I live, as the first stop, I probably would have had all my own personal gear in my flight cases, which is ready to go at all times. But to ship to Nashville, it would have cost too much money. So the only other way to get around that would be to rent a backline kit, which is not my favorite thing to do. I much more prefer my own stuff. And I did bring some personal things like sticks, cymbals, electronic triggers, cables, stuff like that, little small things that make me more comfortable. But now renting gear is a thing sometimes. Most of the other tours that I've done that have been planned out in advance with a traditional schedule, I'll bring my own personal kit out, which is the best thing you can. you have to be comfortable with your own gear, and it's tough to get used to something else just for a short period of time.
Oh, I can absolutely imagine. And yeah, again, it's just like when you're on call to be able to do these different kinds of setups, and you only got a few days to be able to learn the sets, and then you're going out on tour. You want to be able to play on a kit that you're going to be comfortable with. So I can imagine, it's just that hassle being able to rent out a kit, making sure that all the drums are lined up good. Just it's going to tune well. It's going to still look good. It's going to sound good. I mean, there's so many things that go into it, and when you already got all these things that are going on, I can imagine the hassle that comes with that. But once you finally get up on stage and everything's starting to go right, all the songs are going the way that it's supposed to go, I can imagine there's no greater feeling than that.
I mean, that's the only reason I do what I do. I know some drummers get a kick and the rush of adrenaline from being a studio drummer, and I love that just as much, but something about playing live and getting that instant gratification from an audience of 5,000 people or 10,000 people or 40,000 people, that's the reason I do this. I love the traveling aspect of it as well, but playing live, that's I can't get enough of that. That's my thing.
Yeah, and looking at the tour dates that you got going on right now, I mean, it's great to see how extensive of a tour this is, like all the different areas that you're getting to hit. I mean, what is it like for you, like between gigs and being able to travel all over? I mean, how is that for you?
I love it. It's the U.S., this is just another U.S. run for me. I've traveled the U.S. and toured the U.S. countless times. But that being said, it's nice going back to certain cities that I'm so familiar with. Currently, I'm in Pittsburgh, and I've been to Pittsburgh, at least 10 times. And so I'm familiar with where I am. I can walk outside my door and kind of get a grasp of, okay, I know what's down that street if I go that way, or I know that there's a, badass coffee shop 15 minutes away from here. So it's really comfortable. It kind of keeps me from getting homesick, because I feel like the entire United States is just one, conglomerate of this entity that I've already experienced. So if I go down to Tallahassee, or if I go to Columbus or San Francisco or New York, it doesn't feel foreign to me. And don't get me wrong, I love foreign countries. Those are amazing, but you don't always get to tour Japan. You don't always get to tour Europe. But when you do, and you are in a new city where you know nothing, that's just even more exciting. But currently, being just in the U.S., it's just very comfortable. It's nice to know my way around, and when you have a great crew that you're on tour with, it's always fun to see the places that they've experienced and that you've experienced. And like last night, I took the guitar player out on tour. We went out to the spot that's my favorite spot in Philly. And he had never been there before, and he loved it. And it was just kind of nice to share that. And then he took me to another place that he'd been to. It's just, it's very comfortable out here for me.
And speaking of that as well, I mean, it seems like you have a great connection already with the crew and the band members on this current tour. I mean, what is it like for you to be able to adapt to these situations, like playing with other musicians and learning the aspects of other crew members depending on the tour?
Well, every tour is not the same, like I said before, and you don't know who you're going to get. You might get people that you're not comfortable being around, or you might not vibe with what their day-to-day might be, because it can be daunting. The tour that I'm currently on, thankfully, is a super small camp, so there's not a lot of crowdedness on the bus currently, but I've also been on a bus where there's 13 people and you can't find, a quiet spot. But to go from each tour, it's pretty easy for me. I work well with a lot of people, and I can get along with almost anybody. I've never really had any issues with that. But no, it is what it is. I mean, it's just like going to high school for the first time, or some sort of class or seminar for the first time, where you kind of have to put yourself out there and make new friends. If I didn't want to do that, I probably wouldn't be a touring drummer. But that comes so naturally to me that I think I thrive well.
Oh yeah, and that totally makes sense, and it's great to see that openness. I mean, whether you're sharing the stage with the people, whether it's the crew members that are making you look good on stage, or the fans, or whatever the case is. I mean, there's so many different situations that can happen with any touring cycle and anything that's going on there, and it's great to see that availability, that openness, and constantly learning, like different ideas, both on stage, off the stage, whatever the case is, and just like constantly wanting to be out on tour.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that in mind, you're currently on this tour right now with Taylor Gray. I mean, how has this current run been for you so far?
We're only about 2 weeks in. It is a very chill tour. That's the best way that I can put it. Everyone's great. The songs are fun. We have a short set. We're opening act for this boy band called Why Don't We? So it's not a 45-minute drawn-out thing or an hour-and-a-half long set. It's very quick. We don't sound check until later in the day, and then I'm done playing by usually 8 p.m. So it's very, very simple. And I'd like it's more cozy than anything. Everyone's great though. So far, I'm having a blast. And this goes on for at least another 3 more weeks. And then there's a possibility that we're going to Europe in the fall. So, and that will be fun.
Oh, that'd be great to see that too. It's like you were saying, like you travel the U.S. so often. I mean, when you are able to explore the other territories of the world, like Europe, I mean, even though there might be some like language barriers or just familiarity differences that's going on there. I mean, it's always great to be able to explore the world and try new things.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I love food from all different cultures, and I'll try anything from a new country. I think that's what this is about, and this world is so small and accessible these days to get anywhere you want. So I highly recommend people that don't travel or even travel for work, but just travel for fun to get outside the U.S. There's a lot more great things out there.
Oh, definitely. So with all that in mind, I mean, obviously with how much that goes into being in the touring and everything, there's not always as much chance to be able to learn as much on the drums, just focusing on the sets. But is there anything you're currently working on right now outside the set?
As far as drumming, I've actually encountered that. It's tough to progress as a drummer when you're on tour because you don't necessarily always get the space and time it would require you to practice. And on a tour like this, since I didn't get to bring my own gear, I couldn't bring a practice kit. So I have a practice pad, which is perfect, and I have sticks with me. I have those in my hotel room if I need be. But as far as progressing, it's really hard. I can keep my hands warm, but as far as interdependence, it's kind of tough. But I'm currently working on, I made a graph chart on sextuplets, and I routed out every option of a linear pattern for sextuplets between hands and beat. Because that is the thing that I feel I'm lacking in most right now. So that's a big thing. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is primarily focusing on technique. I did some lessons with Dave Elich about a year ago, and I'm still focusing on this new technique of how I'm holding my sticks and how I play my kick pedal and posture and everything else that comes with that.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think about that when they're not a drummer, not necessarily a musician, like how important it is to be able to hold the sticks in the right way, getting the seats at the right angle and sitting in it in the right spot. So the foot technique, hitting the right spots on the pedal. I mean, there are so many different aspects that can go into affecting your playing, either for the better or for the worse.
No, I developed kind of a bad technique after high school, or after Musicians Institute, and I was a fine drummer. I was still getting work, but I wanted to make this a lifelong career, and I didn't want to hurt my body any more than I feel like I probably already was, because I kind of developed a natural lean or a slouch, and I was sitting way too high on my seat, and I was only bearing the beater, and I had a lot of stress all over my body. Like, parts of my body were tense for no reason while I was playing. And thankfully, that was addressed. Dave helped me out with that, and now I'm just so much more comfortable sitting behind the kit, and I have him to thank for that.
And with that in mind, I mean, obviously with getting rental kits, I mean, how long did it take for you to be able to adjust to where you felt comfortable enough to be able to play the kits in the right way that you wanted it to be?
Oh, there was no time. I flew in to New York for a 1 day of rehearsal on another kit that wasn't going on tour, so I couldn't be comfortable on that one. And then we flew into Nashville, did a morning rehearsal, day of show, and we were very crunched on time. There was no let me get comfortable. It was just set up a drum set and start playing. And I had to utilize time once I was on tour to get the kit more comfortable. because the last thing you want to do is make people wait for you.
Oh, yeah.
And since the drums are such a particular instrument and we all are picky, it was nice that at MI they made you play on kits that you weren't comfortable on so that you could adapt if need be. Because, a lot of people from the church, gospel drummers, they get to sit in on a kit that they've never sat on before, and yet they kill it every time. So there can be something said to not being comfortable and kind of taking yourself away from that comfort zone and maybe setting your drums up differently some days. Like, that can be fun and rewarding as well. As long as you can make sure you're hitting that snare in whatever spot you need it to be, everything else can kind of work its way around it and you can adjust. But it took me quite some time. The first few shows I was very uncomfortable, but that I couldn't use that as a crutch. I couldn't go to the artist and be like, oh, I'm not playing well because the drum set's not what I want it to be. That would be ridiculous. I would be looked at with ridicule and I'd probably be fired. So you just have to do the best that you can with whatever is in front of you. So after about 2 weeks, I'm now finally comfortable with this kit. So it's as good as can be.
Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up about being able to adapt to any kind of setup. I mean, that is such an important thing, especially in a role like yours as well, too. I mean, whether you just got like a 3-piece kit with a hi-hat and a ride, or you got a full blown heavy metal kit, it's like you gotta be able to adapt to those situations, know where everything's gonna be, and just being able to play the songs the best that you possibly can be, because I mean, that's what's gonna land you your next gig. That's what's gonna help you keep the gigs that you want to be able to have, and just being able to progress as a drummer as well, too, because you never know what those situations are going to be, how many cymbals you're going to have, how many drums you're going to have, whether the hardware's broken or not. I mean, there's so many different variables that can go into it, but once you learn how to be able to play on any kit that you need to be able to play on, you're only going to get better.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
So, again, with all this in mind, I mean, currently on tour right now, possibly heading to Europe in this lineup as well. Is there anything else that's being lined up for like the end of the year or into 2020 yet?
There is, but I am not releasing that information yet. There is some stuff in the works, which would be fantastic if it happens, but I don't want to jinx it. So I'm keeping it under wraps as of now. But if the one I don't want has to happen, then I have other stuff that will take over. There's always work in the fall. Touring in the fall is very common. So, and I have multiple artists that I'm currently with, and it'll kind of just be up to me last minute deciding who I want to go on tour with. So we'll see. I would just say stay tuned and see what happens with my career.
Oh, that is fantastic to hear that too, and I completely understand not wanting to jinx anything like that, but it's great that you are in that position where you do have that name out there, that you are in demand, that you can be able to pick and choose what you want to be able to do. I mean, of course that comes from being reliable, that comes from your availability, being able to adapt to all these situations, and that is such an important aspect to being a drummer, being a musician, because being the drummer relies so heavily on being able to make the music really sing live, to make everyone else really shine out. And when you're able to do that, and you're able to work around everything else that it takes to being on the road drummer, and it's great to see that you're constantly being able to improve upon that and continue to get your name out there the way that you have been.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem. So, with that in mind, I mean, obviously with being able to use a rental kit now rather than your normal kit, what is your normal setup?
That changes from every gig. That's a very important thing that I think people should always understand. You can't bring your double kick pedal to a singer-songwriter gig. You can't have 30 cymbals if you're playing a small club tour. It's just not going to work, and maybe it's not called for that type of music. So every gig I do, I have to step back, find out what's needed, talk to the music director, see what they're thinking they want it to be, because the music director is just as important as the artist. So you listen to the music, you hear the sounds on the records, you have to understand, you figure out, do you want to make those electronic, do you want to make those real? So it really changes every single gig. The tour that I'm on right now, I would say I have a decently minimal setup. I have an SPDS, 2 toms, 1 snare, 2 crashes and a ride and a splash. But for other gigs, I can go a lot bigger. For this other girl, Kiara, it's very more electronic, so I have more like auxiliary sounds and a side snare and multiple splashes, a lot of triggers, and a lot of pad sounds. So it just depends. And that's kind of the exciting part. I really do like kind of taking a step back and thinking, what drummer, like what if I was in the audience, what would I want to see and hear from that drummer? Because it's all about the audience. If they're enjoying it, then you're doing a great job. So it's kind of a toss up each time.
Oh, definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up as well too. I mean, there's so many different sounds and setups that you can have depending on the gig. And one thing that is definitely becoming more and more involved in the live setup is using the electronic aspects of everything, whether it's the triggers or drum pads and stuff like that. I mean, what is that like for you, being able to adapt to like the acoustic drums compared to the electric and triggers and all of the other electronic setups?
I've been using some form of electronics for at least 9 years. I've always been a fan of the Roland SPDS and the SPDS-X. And when I was a tech and I worked for other drummers, I've experienced other products, Yamaha's version, the DTX and whatnot. But the one I feel most comfortable with is the Roland one. But it's pop music and it's modern, and there's going to be electronic sounds. There's going to be claps. There's going to be 808 kicks. It can be recreated live, but if you're limited to one kick drum, really hard to change that sound mid-set. And if you do, you might be upsetting the front of house guy because he's already worked on his sounds, and now you're adjusting them. So it took me some time to figure out how to kind of utilize that into my playing and what certain music directors want from the electronic sounds, because they might not know that device as well as you do. So it's nice to be able to put my own input in and say, hey, I don't think we should, add a kick trigger on these things, but we can do an extra separate kick trigger on certain songs and certain verses and go back and forth between choruses. So it's really just, you have to be knowledgeable in that just as much as the acoustic drum set. But when you can blend both together, it just comes out sounding just so much more full and present. It's really, really nice. And every drummer I know that's on some sort of pop gig uses it, and it's inevitable. You have to have something like that on these types of gigs. If I was in a rock band, I would 100% not have an SPDS on stage. That would make no sense. But I'm not in a rock band, so I got to do what I got to do.
Oh, yeah, but, again, with that, I mean, it gives you so many great ideas of what to do, even if you just play an acoustic kit again. I mean, when you have so many different ideas of what, of electric sounds, I mean, you're able to adapt that to any situation, and when you're able to use, like, a hybrid kit like that, when you have these electronic sounds mixed with the acoustic, I mean, there's, like, an infinite array of ideas that can come into the future that you can learn from learning these songs.
Yeah, and if anything, it helps out with my interdependence. Listening to these producers making the drum beats on these songs, they're not necessarily drummers themselves, so they create really odd kick patterns that line up with claps and snaps. And there's been some songs where I had to just stop and go, what is going on here? Like, I have to learn this crazy kick pattern, and then I have to learn this weird tom pattern, and I have to do a clap at the same time. It was frustrating at first, but now I enjoy that. If it's something difficult, that kind of does it for me. But it can be frustrating, but it's also nice if you don't get to use electronic sounds. Say you can find a way to manipulate your snare and maybe just kind of hit it differently or put your hand on it and mute it, and instead of using electronic sounds, keep it acoustic. Acoustic will always translate better than electronic. And people are getting so creative these days with stacking cymbals and stacking multiple cymbals on top of each other and adding jingles and bells and stuff that I can see the drumming community is trying to lead away from the electronics more than absorbing it into their playing.
Oh yeah, and I love seeing that so much, specifically in the cymbals as well too. I mean, like the idea of stacking cymbals together or adding jingles or bells or whatever the case is. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do with that acoustic setup. But again, just like being able to use the electronic aspects of it. I mean, it's a fun idea to hear these electronic sounds and see if there is a way to replicate it onto an acoustic set, or even in your own playing, if there's a way to be able to find that sound for like your next gig or whatever that case will be.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome. Well, again, I I think we covered so much ground here, and I really thank you so much for taking this time to be able to talk to me about everything that you got going on right now. Your current tour right now with Taylor Gray going through America right now. A few more weeks left of this touring before possibly heading up to Europe. Lots of potential things going on in the fall and into 2020, which is awesome to see. Being able to learn your insights into learning pop music, being able to incorporate the electronic and acoustic into your drumming, and just seeing everything that you've accomplished so far in your career. It's so inspiring to see that, and it was just amazing to be able to talk to you about all of it.
Josh, thank you. That's you're very, very kind. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be able to tell my story for what it is.
Oh, not a problem. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet?
No. People obviously can reach out to me on Instagram at Zarzeka. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm always on there, and I treat that better than some emails sometimes. And I'm an open book. If you're a random drummer and you have questions, hit me up. I'm not. I shouldn't come across intimidating. So, and I do get questions a lot on Instagram, and I'm more than welcome those comments.